right now. You're listening to the Scary Vibes podcast. My name is Michael, aka Mr. Scary Vibes.
And my name is Abe, aka Bigg Paranormal. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back. Season 2, episode 24. And it feels like it's been forever and ever since we did our
Mhm.
last episode. Since, last week was the holiday. We kind of took a week off. We've been streaming so much, but we have a very, very special day and guest to introduce to everybody. And that is AJ True Crime, uh, paranormal investigator, horror collector. Welcome to the podcast.
What's going on? Thank you for having me.
Likewise, thank you for joining us. The first question I always ask everybody, and it seems to kind of become like a favorite thing. Everybody's always like, make sure you ask this question. And it's going to be, what is your favorite scary movie?
Ooh. I like 80s horror movies because I kind of grew up during that time, but one of my favorites is Shocker. I'll never, not like that movie. Remember he was like the electric chair, one through like the outlets and stuff. That was awesome.
Mhm.
It's one of my favorite
Wow,
movies of all time, yeah.
that's actually one that we have not actually commonly heard, man. You always hear Jason, you always hear Freddy, you always hear Michael Myers, but it's actually pretty refreshing to hear somebody that's actually like stepping outside of the box.
Right.
And I mean, Shocker itself is like it's like a cult classic movie too, and I
Yeah, big
believe it's
time.
also a Wes Craven film also. But
Mhm.
yeah, man, that's awesome. What a great pick. That's
You know,
great.
I grew up on like you said, Jason, Freddy, Michael Myers. I even have I don't know if you guys could see that, but a Jason mask
Yeah.
tattooed on my hand. But Shocker, when I first saw that, I was like, holy crap. First thing I wanted to do was like, can I do that? Minus the whole electric chair thing, but I was like, how do I travel through like outlets, but that movie was awesome when it came out,
And it kind of coincides with your whole vibe too, man. The whole AJ true crime thing
Mm-hmm.
mixed in with paranormal. Like, bro,
Right.
that's right up your alley, man. So, like, I don't know, Mike, if you're too familiar with Shocker, dude, but it's basically about a guy who's on death row. I mean, he's a serial killer, and I mean, he's just done the most heinous and horrible things.
Yep.
Well, through a strange set of events, he ends up, they go through with the execution, and somehow his spirit is able to travel through electricity,
Yep.
which is, man, it's a really really cool concept.
So
I
what
never
is
even
he?
realized, like, when you mentioned the whole paranormal thing, like, all these years. I mean, obviously that's a little weird, but I never put that two together till just now. Like, oh yeah, it is paranormal. I just kind of thought, well, it's supernatural, right? So I was just kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was like the coolest thing in the movie. He got electrocuted. You kind of see it like poof, go away, and then he just starts popping out of the outlets and stuff, or the electrical appliances
So
and
I
stuff.
so I've never seen it, and I mean, I hate to be like, "Oh my god, we're gonna like have spoilers for a movie that's like 30
Oh,
years old." But I mean, what was he doing to when he was traveling? Like, was he doing it for good or was he doing it for evil? What was the purpose?
oh, he was doing it for evil. He wasn't good. He was a killer.
Yeah,
Did
he
he?
was a bad.
Oh my god, yeah. I've seen the cover art to that many times, and I've
Uh-huh.
overlooked it. But I mean, Wes
The cover
Craven
art
and
is
the fact.
probably the best thing about it, because it's just like, I know there's some of the movie posters where like he's in the chair and you see like the electrical outline of him being zapped. That was probably
Mhm.
that made it, I think, what it is today was the artwork. Damn good movie. You
Yes.
got to see it though. I won't say any more because like, I don't want to ruin it for you, but I think we kind of
Yeah.
already did. But yeah.
But
I'm
going into it, man, you have to just keep in mind that it is very 80s. It's a
Yeah.
very 80s movie.
I don't even remember what
Okay.
year that
But that's
came
the
out.
reason
What
why
was
we
it?
love
You remember what year that came out? I don't know. I think it was
I'm
like mid
not sure,
80s, right?
man. I can actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about mid 80s.
Mid 80s, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But it was
So
awesome
you
though.
know, you showed your Jason tattoo, and actually, I want to apologize to you guys. I want to apologize to our listeners and watchers if I look a little bit out of it. So I was actually starting a
Mhm.
horror sleeve today, and today was the first session, and I was in the chair for like 5.5 hours, and
Oof.
I literally got home. maybe like 2 hours ago. I chewed up a bunch load of ibuprofen, and I am here with you guys. But I want to apologize. But yeah, I actually have a fun story. So what I'm working on the front part of my sleeve is gonna be it's gonna be Gengar, Ghostface, and Leatherface. And there's a funny story with my Gengar that I want to talk about because it's kind of funny. So I had a employee that worked for me, Jesus, and he was a big Yu-Gi-Oh fan. He kept buying Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I was like, you know what? I love Gengar. So I went on eBay. I started ordering up all these Gengar cards.
Right.
But bro, as soon as they started coming in, weird stuff started happening around the store. We started hearing like loud booms in the back. Shit was falling over. I was
Oh,
convinced I was convinced that it was Gengar, and I was like, "Okay, I gotta get rid of these cards.
Really?
He's causing havoc." Because I was buying like Japanese cards, limited cards, and so what does a smart person do? I'm gonna ink him on my skin so he could be with me forever.
right. And for the people that don't know, because I didn't know right off the top of my head because I'm not a Pokemon fan, but Gengar is a Pokemon, actually a rather popular Pokemon, and when you take a look at him, man, he's got this big wide grin, man, and it's just like something about it just screams Mr. Scary vibes. So it's perfect, the fact that he's actually putting this thing on his arm. But man, dude, 5.5 hours, dude.
That's a long time.
That's
I
a
know,
long time to get stuck with a needle, brother. But do
Hmm.
appreciate you taking the time, man. That's
yeah.
awesome. Can't wait
When
to
it's
see
all
what it
said
looks
and
like.
yeah, when it's all said and done, I'll make sure I post it on my story or share with you guys. I'm excited to do this. I've been like holding off on it for a while, but yeah, I'm excited. But AJ, thank you again for being here. Let's get
No
all into
problem.
you. Like, I would have learned so much about you. You're the busiest guy that I've ever met. We've been trying to get this together for a while, but I've been following your content. I watch you on TikTok, Instagram. You're always
Oh,
on the
thank you so much.
cemetery. Kind of, explain to, me and Big and all our listeners and watchers what you do.
So, I consider myself a paranormal investigator. I do it full time. I don't do it for fun, right? Well, I think, well, let me rephrase that. I do it for fun, right? Because I still go with people ghost hunting, but I do it professionally. I help people that believe they're truly going through some paranormal activity or, something that is not normal to us, right? Um,
Hmm.
I've been doing it for a long time professionally. I started having experiences at a really young age. And when that happened, I kind of got that paranormal bug, So um, I've just been kind of doing it ever since.
Okay, so I'm like curious. You said it, Uh, I have a few questions. I'm curious, like how you actually got into it, and then you said, you had that first experience when you were younger that kind of got you like locked in. Like, what was that experience like?
So, oh man, I always get the age wrong. I know I was under 7 years old. Let's just say between 5 and 7. I actually lived on the north side of Chicago. Um, I believe it was Christiana, which I later learned was a haunted street. But I lived across the street from the school, and I walked outside, and just immediately saw an apparition. And it kind of took me by surprise because being that young, I just knew two things. One, whatever that was wasn't normal, and whatever it was wasn't alive. Like when I first saw the apparition, it looked kind of grayish, and I was the only one that saw it. I think I was with my parents or my brother, and I just looked at it, and it just was a guy looking back at me, and that was it. But at that time, that was like in I don't even know, 80s, because I was born in the 80s. I'm an old man. But there was no
Same.
internet, there was no YouTube. You just basically got your education from books. And so I knew right away that
Hmm.
that was a ghost, right? And I didn't see apparitions every day. It was just kind of something that popped up every once in a while. But most people would probably think demons and whatnot, you know. But for me, I wasn't even really concerned with seeing an apparition. I was more concerned with like, how did that happen? Like, how did I see that?
Mm.
What's going on? So people were like, "Oh, that's like a psi ability, you know, like a psychic ability, seeing apparitions." But for me, you know, I was fascinated with seeing ghosts, but I was more fascinated with how we were seeing it. Why is this happening? There's obviously an afterlife, and then, like I said, I was just hooked.
So I'm curious, like, how you dealt with that. Like, was that something you were embarrassed or shy to tell people, or was that something you
Uh,
were openly like, "Hey, mom, dad, I just saw something."
so yeah, I think like the first people I told were like my brother and sister. I was like, I saw something. They were like, you know, they didn't know what to say. They're like, yeah, you know, whatever. Because I was the youngest. And then I told my dad, you know, you know, my dad's full-blooded Mexican, you know, so he was and hardcore Catholic. He's like, whoa, whoa, that was a demon. You don't talk about that. Never say that again. I don't know if he said that for my own safety. Like if I started saying it, maybe something would happen, or you know, maybe that's just what he believed. You didn't see nothing. We don't talk about that, you know. So there was no talking to him, but about it. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like maybe I'm comfortable talking about it, but others, especially those that couldn't truly tell me what it was, just really
Mm.
didn't acknowledge it. So it's something I just kind of had to deal with myself.
So, like, one thing that I think is absolutely fascinating is that you're this kid, you're at a very young age, and you
Hmm.
see this apparition in front of you, and most of the time people would have just been like scared, would have turned and like ran for the hills. But it sounds like to me like something analytical just like went off in your mind, and you
Right.
just went in like a completely different direction, and you're like, no, 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 I want to know more. Like, I want to know where this thing came from. I want to know how this is possible. I want to figure out, does it have something to do with like the time of the day, or is there some kind of special sense or something like that?
Hmm.
And I just think it's awesome that instead of like fearing this, it kind of ignited something in you, to like ask those questions. And I think it's awesome that now you're in a position, years later. And listen, man, I was born in the 80s too. We're not that old. Okay. I just wanted to clarify.
Right.
That's why I'm not gonna lie. I took a little bit of offense. I was like, oh no.
No, no, don't,
Oh
you know. Well, because
no, I'm
sometimes,
just messing.
especially now, you know, with me being on the internet and everything, and people are like, wait a minute, how old are you? I'm like, well, you know, I tell them, yeah, I was born in the 80s, you know, but because some people are like, you don't look like you're born in the 80s. And some are like, oh my God, you're old. And I was like, well, that's what happens, right? Once you're born, you just
those
get old.
kids, those kids, they're so disrespectful. One thing that I
Exactly.
hate is when they tell is when they're like, wait a minute, you were born in the 1900s? And it's like,
Yep.
Yeah,
oh
that's all.
man, you're killing me.
Hmm.
Yeah, that sounds like my daughter. She's always like, "Oh my God, you're born in the 18 or 1980s or whatever, you know." But I mean, it's kind of a flex, you know. I had heard, a celebrity say it. I seen on TikTok, like instead of like always being like, "Oh my God, I'm this old," like it's actually an accomplishment, man. You made it to be this age. Like, not
Right.
everybody gets to say that.
Exactly.
So, we're out here flexing.
Oh, for sure. And you
Ab-
know, I tell people like now, especially like being in the paranormal, like people these days like to do things the easy way. They like to use those ghost hunting apps, which are like for entertainment purposes. Personally, I'm not a big fan of them at all. But when we were
Mm,
ghost hunting back in the day, we used like real spirit boxes, ones that you had to like build yourself, and you know, you would basically try to like break it to get it to like auto scan and whatnot. You know, and I joke around with people. I'm like, back when ghost hunting was real and when it was fun, you know. Um, but yeah, these kids, they all try to do things the easy way and whatnot, and they never
mhm.
really, you know, learn how to properly do it. But I don't know.
You
You
know,
know, when
I like the way you say that though. The fact that you're pointing it out, right? Like, so you started ghost hunting back. I mean, I'm sure that this has been going on since the early ages and whatnot,
Hmm.
right? But like the way that you're saying that you and others like you during that time, were the ones that were starting to use the technology, and that technology wasn't even available back then, right? And
Right.
so like you guys were actually taking it upon yourselves to grab a radio and break it open and look at all the parts and everything, all in the pursuit of the paranormal, of figuring
Right.
this stuff out, seeing if you guys could actually communicate with something out there that not everybody can see. And that's absolutely just fascinating to me that you guys, you and people that were doing it with you back then, that you guys were able to do that. I mean, I was playing wrestling and doing
But
all sorts
you were
of
being chased
yeah,
by ghosts.
yeah, I was
Don't get me wrong.
actually
I was still doing that too, but
mhm,
if you were like, "Hey, does anybody want to go ghost hunting?" I would be the first, like, "Please, let's go!" Like right now, So, but that's just I think, like, especially when you're younger, people like to do the Ouija board and try to go ghost hunting, and we would go
mhm,
to like haunted woods and whatnot. Um, some people grew out of it. I didn't, So,
mhm,
and especially with like spirit boxes, people think that's like a thing that's recently new. I mean, ITC
mhm.
research has been around. People using radios and stuff like that has been around since like the 50s and 60s. I mean, there was,
Oh wow.
oh yeah, like Konstantin Radove, I believe he wrote a book, I think in the 60s, about them using those old, I mean, they're not boom boxes, but they're like those old teletape radios to try to
Mm,
communicate with spirits. One of his most popular things is like phone calls from the dead. I mean, but that was one of his most recent, things where they say he like died and he called his paranormal friends like from the dead. You'll hear a lot of
mm,
stories like that, but that was actually going on, oh, like in the 60s and 70s. So this,
mhm.
it's like, I guess it's old paranormal research history, right? So it's been
Right,
around
right.
for a long, long time.
For some
See, and I
reason,
feel
like I
like I feel like you and Mr. Scary Vibes, when if you guys were kids and you met up at the same time, you guys would have been fast buddies, man, because he was the one that was always messing around with like the Ouija board and
Mhm.
doing the seances and stuff like that. I, on the
Yep.
other hand, was hiding from all this stuff. Like I was literally like not wanting to acknowledge that any of this stuff existed because I was actually getting like scared, plagued with these things at night and stuff like things of that nature, man. But
Right.
isn't it crazy how like, again, so many years later, man, this is where we're at right now because of our fascination, not only just with horror, but with the paranormal. And now, like years later, man, I'm 42. I'm about to be 43 in a couple months, and I'm just now starting to kind of learn about stuff, having to do with the supernatural, having to
Right.
do with the paranormal. And I wish that I had that that curiosity
Hmm.
that you had. Maybe I'd be in a different position now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But man, kudos to you, man. That's awesome.
Well, see, it's kind of like you mentioned, like when you were little, you were trying to avoid it, be afraid, you would probably interpret it if you had an experience as something negative. And that's where I tell
Hmm.
people, like, growing up Catholic, I think they kind of push, that like it's, evil, it's bad, those aren't spirits and whatnot. But I think where a lot of that goes wrong is like, like if you had an experience right now, if you were raised thinking that was bad, you would interpret that as negative, right? Because that's like the
Hmm.
fear that's been instilled in you, right? But
Right.
for me, the way I interpret something as negative is like, are you being harmed? Are you being made to feel ill? So when people call me, especially now, they're like, oh, I think it's negative. I'm like, well, why do you think that? They're like, I just don't feel right. I'm like, well, that could be you presenting that fear. But, in order for me to determine if something is truly negative, I need to see, you need to be harmed, basically. So that's why, like, I have a daughter now, and I do consider myself a spiritualist because I do believe spirits show themselves, they communicate with us, and I'm kind of raising her like, if you do ever see anything, don't be afraid. Like, well, it's okay to be afraid. You shouldn't think like, oh, I don't want to see it or whatever, because that, in my opinion, especially if it's truly a positive experience, you should embrace that, not be afraid of it. Now, if you're being harmed and you're immediately getting scratched, which is truly rare, that type of negativity is very rare, then that's a different story, right? But if
Mhm.
you're just seeing shadow figures or apparitions, or you saw an orb, uh, I don't think you should be. I don't think you should be afraid of it.
No, I'm loving your thought process. It's kind of like thinking about living in a world where, the living and the unliving kind of live in a world of harmony together. You don't have to be afraid of it just because you don't
Right.
understand it.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly.
you're saying, probably one out of 100, spirits might be a bad spirit, but 99% of them probably are just confused, lost, or just
Right.
the forgotten. There's could be a thousand reasons why they're still here. And I love your thought process on of like embracing it and kind of like don't be afraid of it. I love that.
Yeah. I don't. I get. I think. Okay. So like, I get most people won't be like me, where I'm like, people are running for their lives and crying and getting scared. I think, especially with being in the paranormal, I think if you're truly afraid of something or whatever, you probably shouldn't do it, right? Um, but
Mhm.
then again, I can understand, like, if you are afraid, it's a natural reaction. Um, then maybe you should slow it down, take a few steps back, or work with somebody that isn't afraid. Because if you do catch the wrong spirit or entity, whatever it may be, um, that can actually, uh, do harm upon you, right? And I do believe
Mhm.
that. A lot of, even today, a lot of, parapsychologists, they don't really take the spiritual side of, the paranormal and investigations. And I think that's where I differ. I do, because I do understand people's beliefs and whatnot. I don't always accept it, especially when I, help people. I don't always accept what they say, but I do, I'm always respectful and I do acknowledge it. And I think
Mhm.
that's where
So
people are different. Some are like, that's evil, it's demonic, or, yada, yada. And like I said, I accept it. I just might not agree with them.
Right.
so so I know you mentioned the word fear and you're preaching don't be afraid, but can you tell
Right.
us a time that you were afraid when you were out maybe doing an investigation?
Um, So investigate this. This is gonna sound terrible. I don't really get scared or nervous whatever during investigations, especially now, because like when I do help people, there's a lot of people that stay, or I should say, investigators that don't do residential, or meaning like
Mhm.
they don't help families, and I think that's kind of obnoxious. I think if you're gonna do investigations, and you're gonna truly do it professionally, you shouldn't have limitations. So you should be helping people, right? Or I'm sorry, uh, if you're going to do it professionally, you should help someone that's in need, right? I think a lot of
Mhm.
people, like, going back to like what people are doing today, they're kind of doing all the same haunted locations. Like they do it for fun and call themselves investigators. But, when the reason why I got into it was to help people. Um, like if they're truly going through something, whether it's good or bad, right? Um,
Okay.
but I think for the most part, like if you're gonna go help somebody, you shouldn't be afraid. Now, there's been
Mhm.
times in the past where I have been afraid. Most of that was when I was younger and actually doing a lot of the crazy things we were talking about. Like I've had a lot of Ouija board experiences, I've had a lot of seance experiences. I'm really fond. I mean, I don't want to say fond. I really like scrying, but I'm not the greatest at it. But I've had experiences doing that. I've told this story a couple of times. I actually don't share it a lot online, but I'll tell you guys. When I was younger, we were doing Bloody Mary. Now,
Oh.
that's where you go into the
My
bathroom and
favorite.
you say Bloody Mary into the mirror with your friends. But when I was doing that, there's a couple different ways that you're supposed to do it, right? Some people were like, each
Mhm.
person has to say it 3 times. Some say it 10 times. Uh, but I did it this time with like a new person. So they're like, "Hey AJ, I heard you love doing Bloody Mary. Let's do it." I must have been like 12 or 13 at the time, and I was like, "Okay." So we went to the bathroom in my old house, which had no windows. So it was just, you close that door, it was pitch black. And we put a candle out. And he was like, yeah, how many times do you do it? I'm like, oh, we do it like 3 or 5 times. He's like, no, it's like 33 or 38 times you're supposed to say it. So I was like, huh.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, let's do it. And I think there was like 5 or 6 of us, right? And, the first person did it, I did it. And we had a candle out. I started staring at the candle. So I accidentally turned this Bloody Mary session into a scrying session. So I went into this trance-like state looking at the flame. Now, if you don't know what scrying is, that's where you stare into a mirror or like above the flame, and you're supposed to go into like a trance-like state and receive visions from spirits and whatnot. But I just ended up looking at the flame, not knowing what I was doing. So my buddy, and we saw all of our shadows in the mirror's reflection. So my buddy started just like, AJ. And I looked up and we saw all of our shadows combined into this big figure with like 2 horns out the top of his head. And when that happened, it was like 90 degrees out, completely sunny and whatnot. So we started screaming and tried to blow out the candle. It wouldn't go out. We ran outside and, it was pouring rain. And I lived in this like townhouse subdivision. So when you ran to the alley, that's where everybody had their parking spots. All the red cars, their alarms and lights were going off. So we ran to my buddy's house, straight to his basement, started praying on our hands and knees. It was the craziest thing. But that was truly a terrifying experience. I'll never forget it because, some would say we all manifested that with our negative thinking or whatnot. But let me tell you, I was not thinking anything like that. And we just saw that figure and it was crazy. Yeah. So stuff like that kind of scared me a little bit. Another one was an Ouija board session. We started seeing images come like during our session, but almost like hallucinations or like, holographic figures that weren't really there. One of them was like a flame and we were trying to put it out and it was like going through our hands during a Ouija board session. So when stuff like that happens, I mean, especially when you're I think I was a young teen at that age. I was kind of shocked. I was like, how is this happening? But it was also kind of scary. But once you go through it yourself, you kind of like at the point where like, I've seen it all, I've done it all. So when you help people professionally, you really don't get scared anymore. Yeah.
For some reason, I'm like picturing this like great, amazing Netflix TV show.
Yeah.
It's like it follows AJ, being like a teenager, but he's also, he has his teenage problems, but then he's also doing his, his ghost hunting. He's helping people. I would
Yeah.
watch it. You seem like, like an interesting kid. So I'm curious. So for like inspiring ghost hunters out there, young AJ out there, maybe listening and watching, like, what do you need to be an investigator? Like, what is all the equipment? What do you need to get in line? Should you even do it?
That's a tough one to answer because I feel like I'm in between. Do I think you can do it for fun? Yes, you can, right? But I also think like if you come across the wrong site, right? Like if you come across something that can truly hurt you, why would you do that, right? So I guess my point is like if you're gonna do it, you better go in there with an open mind and know that a lot of times nothing will happen. I think where a lot of people get confused today, they think if they go to a haunted location, they have to see an apparition or it's not haunted. And that's not how it really is, right? I tell people 99% of the time, you won't experience anything. And maybe that 1% of the time, something will happen. So can you use equipment? Yeah. I think if you are going to be truly skeptical about it and you're going to be strict, digital recorder and a camera is the best thing to use. There's no, and I tell people first, like, there's no device out there in the world that will ever confirm to you that there is a spirit, right? So nothing will ever prove that there is something there, but there's ways to disprove it, right? Or I should say improve it. like cameras and digital recorders. I can debunk spirit boxes. We could say it's radio. You can debunk, REM pods and tripwire that people love to use. But you know what's really hard to debunk? A digital recorder. When I say, is there anyone here with me? And you play it back and you get something, you can't debunk that. Especially when you and someone else are there and you know it's credible, you really can't debunk that.
Right.
Taking a
What
photo
are
of something, you can debunk lens flare and whatnot, but when you actually see something, ooh, it's
I believe
it'll change your mind. And that's why I tell people, you'll never, it's okay to be a skeptic, but everybody's a skeptic until they have that one experience that changes their mind. And that's how it always
exactly.
is, Yeah.
Exactly. So I know you were saying you were talking about using a digital recorder to capture EVPs,
hmm
correct?
hmm
So can you tell us, was there an experience that you had where you captured something that was just like undeniable, like crystal clear? You captured something on that digital recorder.
Um, Crystal clear. I think,
Mm-hmm.
is it crystal clear? I mean, there's always going to be
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of debate about that, whether it's like feedback. I try not to use, and this is where people have an issue, right? With like some of the equipment that you use. I try not to use modern digital recorders because sometimes with like noise reduction they typically tend to remove some of the things that like we want to hear, whether it's like static feedback or like other distortions. So I try, like this, I think it's like the H2 Zoom is a really popular one. I love it because you can actually listen in real time to what you're recording. So if something does um, respond to you, you'll hear it with headphones. So do I like that one? Yes, but that's also like a $300, $400 digital recorder. But sometimes the best ones you can use are the cheapest ones that are like 20, $30 that don't remove anything, right? But some of the best things I've heard is like my name. Like I would say, tell me your name. And they would say my name. Or I'd say, how many spirits are here with me? And like you could hear responses. Now, I prefer, some of the less, software based digital recorders that don't rely on the software, right? For like recordings. Some of the old ones where it's just play and record are the best ones. But so there's going to be a little bit of feedback on it. But for clarity, I mean, I think it just depends. I think it's the right time, right place, you'll get something back. But for me,
Gotcha.
I mean, I've heard names, I've heard stop it, get out of here. So nothing really too wild, right? But have I gotten intelligent responses? 100%. Because I think like at that point,
Okay.
nothing really phases me with the recordings, but getting answers is just the best thing I could tell you. Yeah.
Yeah. So like right now, I know it's kind of crazy. I'm kind of like zoned out because I'm like, it sounds like I hear like a ball in my back room just bouncing, and I'm home alone right now.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Do you ever like notice just like weird stuff happens around you?
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of funny. I had somebody, or actually, I think I made a video, and so did somebody else about, when we do investigations, right? Sometimes people will be like, "Can I go with you?" and whatnot. And we'd say, "Yeah," but when you start getting into the paranormal, and I'm talking like really in it, where you're doing it like a couple times a month, you're going to really good, like really good sites, right? That are notorious. Like I'll give an example. Congress Hotel is a very active place on, it's on Michigan Avenue downtown. When you start going there a lot, sometimes things can follow you back. And when we bring people to some investigations, we've had them say like, "Hey, I went home and dishes were moving or like rattling." They would hear footsteps because sometimes things can't follow you home. And
Yep.
with me, I don't know if you guys know, but I collect haunted and cursed objects. I have over 300 items in my collection. Some that I've acquired on my own, some from other investigators, and some I've gotten from families that purchase these items. in the what I call in the wild, right? They go to thrift stores and antique shops, and when they bring them home, stuff starts happening. But so for me, that's kind of normal, right? Like hearing stuff. And, technically, I don't want to scare you guys, but, when I have stuff like this in my home or if we're doing stuff like on the internet, right? Like those things can technically come through to you. It's very common.
You're a brave man, sir. You said that you have over 300 pieces of
Yep.
cursed
Like
objects.
haunted and cursed objects in my collection.
So I'm curious, where does one keep all of these things?
I was just going to say
where
that.
do you keep them?
So most of them are in my storage unit or at another location. The
Smart man.
50, you're not going to like this answer. So the most active, I'd say, are like 50 of them. They live with me here in my house right now. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I know everybody is like very familiar with like, the Warrens and the
Mhm.
Annabelle doll, and you always see the doll. That's their prized possession. It's
Right.
there.
It's like I wear it. I wear this as like a chain or like a necklace, Yeah.
That's awesome.
I wasn't expecting that, but yeah. So they always have like that prized possession, and it like I remember hearing how priests would come a couple times a day, a week, and kind of just bless it to kind of just keep it calm. Is there an item that is in your collection that is like out of control that almost scares you? If it were to get into like the wrong hands, how about that?
If it got into the wrong hands, probably. There's definitely a few of them. There was one I acquired from another investigator. We don't really know too much about the history because when you try to communicate with these, they're technically spiritual attachments, right? So, for example, if this doll was haunted, right? People think it's like Hollywood, where like the spirit can see through the eyes. It's not like that. It's technically an attachment, and remember, spirits can travel. So if there's a spirit attached to it, just because it is doesn't mean that that spirit is always here. So, for example, let's just call it Annabelle, right? If I wanted to communicate with Annabelle, like the spirit that is attached to this object, I would technically have to like summon it, be like, Annabelle, are you here with me? That's how you technically start your investigations with like haunted objects, and you have to wait for that activity to happen. But I have objects that have spiritual attachments that can physically harm you. Some of them don't like men. And we had a guy. I was a speaker at the Haunted Rockford conference last year, and there's an object that I have that doesn't like working with men. So, like, if you're an investigator or a ghost hunter, I would say, you can investigate one of my objects, but just be respectful. And if they say no or stop, respect it. But there was a guy there who said, I'd like to challenge one of your objects, another investigator. And he said he was investigating for 10 plus years. And I said, okay, which one do you want? Anytime I have my objects out at a show or whatever, I bring it out for you to investigate. I can't promise anything will happen, but I'll let you try. So he was like, let me investigate this one. So he's like, and that was Marie. And he's like, Marie, if you're here with me, do something to me. I'd like you to try something on me. And nothing happened. And he walked out of the room. And he said, as soon as he walked out of the room, he got a zap. And he said, like, just like a really bad electric shock. And he said that he started sweating. He felt like a lot of stomach pain as soon as he walked out of the room. And he said he started getting the shakes. He thought he was getting food poisoning. And he's like, he went home, showered, whatever. And then he's like, you know what? It was Marie. He actually came back to the conference and apologized. And he said as soon as he did, he felt fine. But so I tell people, like, you can investigate it, but if you're going to challenge, you're going to be kind of douchey, right? You better be prepared for what you ask for, because with objects, anything can happen. It doesn't have to happen right now. It can happen in a week, can happen whatever. But when they start showing you stuff, you'll know. You know what I mean? Like that's how especially when I work with people who acquire unknowingly, get haunted objects. They're like, as soon as they brought it home, they knew stuff started flying off the walls, stuff was, you know,
Mm.
the doll would be found on the floor or the object, whatever it may be, would be moving around. And when anytime like pets go near it, yeah, they just get the
Mhm.
sudden discomfort and whatnot. So I would
Right.
say that can happen with positives too. So it's not just the negative items. If you piss off a spirit, if they're knowingly good, it can come after you. I don't want to say like it can
Yeah.
come after you and do whatever, but nice people can
Just be
be bad
careful.
too. That applies to spirits, you know? Yeah.
Hmm. I like the fact that you seem to treat this with the proper respect that it actually
Right.
deserves. Um, there's a lot of people that you see like that have their TV shows that are at a certain level or whatever.
Hmm.
And one of the things that annoys me the most, being a person who experiences paranormal things a lot, has a lot of these things happen to them. Um, One of the things that I can't stand is when I see a so-called paranormal investigator that openly disrespects or calls out the spirits in an attempt to try to elicit a response,
Right.
right? That kind of stuff makes me extremely upset when I see those kinds of things. But it seems like you understand, like, hey, listen, like these are beings, right? And they
Right.
respond to specific things, right? It's like one of those things where it's like, don't start none, won't be none,
Right.
right?
Right.
I like the fact that you have this respect, and it's very refreshing, honestly, because not a lot of investigators have that, and I'm sure that in doing what you do, you probably do run into, some people that don't have that same level of respect as you. They
Right.
kind of want to call people out, and I think it's because of the whole ignorance thing. And
Sure.
sometimes I say ignorance is bliss, but also ignorance can get you in a lot of trouble sometimes.
Yeah.
You know.
You know, I don't know if I mentioned, like, I consider myself a spiritualist, just like because of
Yes.
everything that, you know, I've seen and been through. I do a lot of spirit work, and I feel like
Hmm.
uh, the more you do that and the more like respectful you are to spirits, right, and work with, like, you know, when I work with spirits or go to like any active location, I'll thank them for allowing me in their space and whatnot. It could be something as simple as that, you know.
Hmm.
And I do feel like when I do investigations, whether it's for fun with people or on my own professionally, I do
Hmm.
feel like it kind of helps me out with the situation because I think spirits obviously know more than we are led to believe, right?
Hmm.
I'll give an example. There was a haunted park that I investigated in Buffalo Grove. Apparently, it's like a well-known place. You know, there's a lot of places that people say are haunted, but it was my one of my first times there, and what ended up happening, you know, like I had just gotten there, maybe like 5 minutes, and I was just like, let me turn on my spirit box, right? And the first
Hmm.
thing I heard was my daughter's name. My daughter's 6, but at the time she was maybe like a year and a half. So she was very new in life. So it was like, where's your daughter, Blaze? And I heard that crystal clear. And I was like,
Hmm.
you know, most people would probably be shitting bricks, right? I was just like,
Right.
how did that happen? Whoever's here, how did they know? So we obviously carry this energy, right? Or there's something that is going on that we just don't know enough about yet, where like it's almost
Hmm.
like information is being carried with us. Because when I hear, where's your daughter, Blaze, that tells me that they clearly knew something about me that your average person doesn't even know, you know?
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so, what is it about the spirit world that they have access to? So, you know, I guess if you ask me, it's like they obviously know more than we do. They know if we truly have that intent of doing good or being an asshole ghost
Mhm.
hunter. So, when people say, AJ, how did you get that response? I'm like, spirit work. Just
Mhm.
be respectful to the spirits, and I truly believe that they work with you. And I think that's why a lot of like parapsychologists, right? Like, you know, the
Mhm.
educators that are that they have no faith, or they just don't believe that, you know, there's a spiritual side to things. They're just like, you know,
Hmm.
they're there with their notepads and computers. I get that, and I do respect that too. But I also think that's why they don't get the kind of evidence that others get that led them there to believe that the place is active, you know, if that makes sense. Um,
Hmm.
so for me, I'm just like, hey, you respect the spirits, they'll respect you back. And when you ask for something, if they feel like, you know, it's that time and place, you'll get a response, and or you'll see something, and that's how it begins, right? So in a way, I feel
Right.
like the paranormal is kind of drawn to me because I saw that at a very young age, and I knew that's the route I wanted to take, and I didn't want to be a clown, you know, screaming at spirits and say, show your, you know, like they do on
Yeah.
TV. That, do I find some of it funny? Sure, but I think they're clowns sometimes, you know, like you
Oh
could just
yeah.
ask nicely and get real evidence, you know? I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
All I know is when I become a ghost, I would want to talk to you. I wouldn't want to talk to somebody who's disrespecting
They,
me, or somebody who comes to my haunted castle and brings like a giant boombox and starts playing Taylor Swift and like says let's have a house party at 3 a.m. You
right.
know, that's like something I
that
wouldn't want to do. I'd be down to sit down and talk to you. So it does
that
make sense. You know, you show them respect, they'll show you respect. I'm
You know,
sure, they're down to
that's true.
communicate.
There is
yeah,
some,
AJ, I don't know. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but there was a guy that we ended up calling out like back a while back who he just really upset me. But there is a guy who is a content creator on,
ooh,
TikTok, and I think this guy, what he does is he goes to these haunted locations, well-known locations,
hmm,
and he will set up a gigantic like Bluetooth speaker, like a
oh
whole
yeah,
setup, and he'll do the the strobe lights and the lasers and everything,
right.
and he is so disrespectful, man, and it makes me so mad. So that's why I say that, like, when I see you and the gentleman that you are, when and the fact
Thank,
that you treat it with so much respect, man,
right.
man, I absolutely love it.
I
Because
think
then
I
you
know who
got
you're
douchebag.
talking about. Is his name like Noah something?
I
It
believe
is.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, he responded, and I mean, I went in his comments, and I mean, some people really, dig it. They think that's, just him having a good time, the spirits having a good time, but you
Hmm.
don't know if the spirits want to have a good time or not. You're
right.
just going
Right.
into their home and you're stirring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know,
definitely.
I wish no harm upon anybody, but I'm like, when I see some of the stuff on the internet, I'm like, man, I hope that guy gets an attachment. Yeah. I I
No,
hate to say that
absolutely,
or
man.
think like that. I always try to remain positive, but sometimes I'm like, if anybody deserved it, it's that guy.
You know
I don't
what though?
know.
There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with a lesson learned.
Right.
Right? There's
Right,
nothing
right, right.
wrong with that.
Exactly.
As long as they don't, get too hurt or lose their lives or something like that. I do have a question. I do have a question though, AJ.
Yeah.
So you did say that people contact you to help them sometimes, and I'm just wondering what does that help look like? So is that literally just kind of figuring things out, or if it's found out that there are spirits that are inhabiting someone's home or some kind of a space,
Mhm.
do you kind of help them to move on? Like what is this help that you do?
Okay, so this depends on the case, but I'll kind of give you like the rundown of what happens, right? So if
Okay.
somebody calls me and says like, "Hey," and I'm gonna kind of backdate it, right? Because what I did back then kind of changes now, especially because like the internet and everything. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but like when your average person calls me, I'd ask them like, "What's going on?" Like I have a really tough screener, meaning like uh, I try to grill you, respectfully grill you to see if you're kind of full of shit or not, right? Before I go out
Mm.
there. Because I feel like I do read people very well. So I'll kind of know if like the story is always changing, if they're kind of being truthful or not. Um, but if I truly feel like they're being credible, and I'll go out there, and I don't charge people or anything. Like if they're truly going through something difficult, uh, because by the time they get to me, they're in kind of like a dire position, right? Like they're not sleeping. But, whether it's a good spirit or bad spirit, I won't clarify because that's case dependent, right? But if
Mhm.
if something is truly going on, it's usually not good by the time it gets to me is my point. So what I'll do is I'll ask them like what's going on, like when I show up, right? Because as an investigator, like you're only there to document, right? Like we
Mm.
technically should not be doing cleansings. We should not be
Right.
trying to help the spirit move on. I'll
Mm.
always start it with asking them like, well, what's your end goal here? So for example, like if they're Catholic, and they'd say, I want my priest to come here and do a cleansing, or I want something professionally done. Now here's the crazy
Mm.
one. If whatever, regardless of their religious affiliation, if they go to their church, depending on the church, they will not let you first. They'll say, hey, sorry, we can't help you. We don't believe that. Or if you get a
Mm.
priest that does, they'll basically say, like we're not buying it or whatever. You have to get an investigator that is credible on your own. And you basically have to prove to your church what is going on and that it's credible. Now, I'll give you an example
Right.
with a Catholic church, right? You're not allowed to use anything basically but a digital recorder, a camera, and a video recorder. And you
Mm.
basically, they don't care if it takes you a year. You have to prove to them that it is a credible thing. So when you go to the priest and he'll say, I'll take it, but I can't help you, you'll get a phone call and be like, what's going on? And I have to tell them credibly, like, what is going on. Remember, that's their end game. But there's some clients, right, that they'll be like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
care. I'm not really religious, but this is what's going on. Then we'll bring what I feel is something that works and we'll try to figure out what's there. But as far as like cleansings, I'll leave it up to them because here's what happens when you start doing that stuff and it doesn't work. And like 99% of the time, cleansings, in those cases don't
Mm-hmm.
work. So you'll
Right.
leave them disappointed and they'll get mad at you. So I'll just say, well,
Mm-hmm.
I'll do my best to figure out what is going on, but if
Right.
that's what you want to know, sometimes like I've seen cases where the people would just be like, "Hey, I need you to stop hurting me and whatever, or just stop doing this," and they just live with it. Because you got to remember, anywhere you're at, it was somebody else's before that. You know, and you're not. This is my personal opinion and professional opinion. If a spirit wants to follow you home, you don't even have to be at a haunted location. You could be walking down your street. If something wants to follow you, they can, right? There's
Right.
no, writing on the wall that says you have to be at a haunted location, you have to be in your house. If something wants to follow you home, you technically won't even know where it came from. So
Yeah.
I just try to leave it with this. I'll do my best to tell you what's going on, in my opinion. Uh, but if
Mm-hmm.
you have an end goal, like, who you want to go to, your church, your religion, whatever it may be that you practice, I'll provide all the evidence to them and you could just go with your end goal. And,
Gotcha.
for the most part, that typically works.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm
when I
All
actually
right.
go there, I'll do anything they're comfortable with letting me do, but it could be cameras in the house, it could be digital recorders going around. Sometimes you could do something simple. One of the old school methods that I've tried and only works like twice is like, like the flower on the floor. We've only seen that one time where it actually happened. But could it just mimics footprints. Um, like I said, typically what we're seeing now is like a lot of poltergeist like activity. And that's technically not paranormal. That's actually like cases of um, like psychosomatic things going on in the home, or meaning like
Mm.
people are actually, they'll say it's paranormal, but really it's like someone that needs like clinical help. And obviously, I'm not a doctor or anything like that. I'd be like, hey, I think something's going on with you and you need to see someone about it because that energy that you're putting out there is
Mm-hmm.
manifesting into something that obviously isn't good. So a lot of times we're actually
Interesting.
seeing a lot of that.
Okay.
Yeah. But I guess my point is too is like it really depends on the case, right?
Gotcha.
there's one case, if you guys want to hear about it, that is kind of interesting. Now,
Okay.
can I say anything here? I'll try to watch what I say, right? But
No,
Yeah,
go ahead.
so I
okay,
mean,
it's very okay.
obviously this is gonna go on like YouTube, Spotify, so
Okay.
clean up as best you can, but go for it.
Okay. So there was a case I was working on. I won't say the neighborhood, but it was in here in Chicago, and this lady, and I'm just gonna say this because I want you guys to understand the situation, right? Uh, she was probably a 55, 60-year-old, very attractive woman, right?
Okay.
Obviously, I'm very professional, but and she's okay with me telling the story. But I tell people she was a baddie. Okay, for 55, 60 years old, she was a very good looking woman. Now
Okay.
she was in a property. She was in a bad situation, right? She had not the best, personal life. She had a couple of dogs, that were only great with her, nobody else. Um, so she couldn't leave the property. Well, basically, she would say all these crazy things were happening in the home. Now, she found me through a referral. And I was
Mm,
like, okay, she was local. So I'm like, I'll just go straight there and check it out. But this woman was clearly in fear for her life. And
wow.
just for context, she kind of always dressed like out there, right? Like very,
Mm,
very
provocative.
provocative. Okay. Uh, I mean, everything was showing curves and cleavage and everything. So I would just ask her what's going on. She would tell me all these really crazy things. She would say 3 a.m. every single night, she'd hear loud banging. Things were scaring her dog, and they would come running into her room, keeping her up all night. So this was a very bad situation from what she told me. She was like, look, if you stay at my house, uh, you'll see what's going on. So I actually did. I was like, I'll stay a few nights and whatever. So I ended up staying like 5 or 6 nights. I would come like 8 p.m. and whatnot. I had her house wired up with Wise cameras. Nothing. It got to the point where I'm like, all right, I have to call it quits. I think, respectfully, I started to believe that she was full of it. As I
Mm,
was packing up, and as I was literally 5 minutes from bolting out the door, I was like, here, I'm going to leave these cameras here. Just if you ever catch anything, let me know. And then
mm.
stuff was just flying off the walls. So I said, oh my
Whoa.
God. I said, oh my God, okay. And it wasn't, now you see these pictures behind me, they weren't dropping. They were like
Right.
like literally shooting off the wall, like full
Wow.
force and whatnot. So then I was like, okay, and because I knew she was in a very bad position, I was like, I kind of skipped a few steps that I would normally take, which means I normally would do some research on where she lives and whatever. So I ended up digging into the property and found out that it used to be a brothel. So I was like, holy crap. I was like,
Wow.
this explains it. So, my opinion, there was some male spirits there, and I'm kind of giving you the short version, right? She was claiming that she would be choked and whatnot, and that she would be grabbed. She was feeling
Mm,
like people touching, or something was touching her everywhere, like
hmm.
random times. She claimed like when she was taking a shower, the shower door would open and whatnot. So I
Mm.
was like, you know what? I think we should bring out some spirit boxes and try to communicate with whatever's here. And then I was like,
Okay.
I was pushing it and I was like, respectfully pushing it. I was like, well, who's hurting her? Like, what's going on here? Tell me what this is. And they were saying she's number 7. And I was like, well, what's number 7? Number 7. And, long story short, she was staying in the room that used to be number 7. And I was like, was she a working girl? And they were like, yeah, calling her whores and stuff and like prostitutes. And they're like
Whoa.
calling her, the cheap B word and stuff like that. So I was like,
Mm,
after all this started going down, I was like, hey, I'm just going to put it out there. Maybe try dressing less attractive at home and see if this would like kind of ease things. I mean, she was completely cool. She was like, "Oh, I don't want to change who I am," but this is obviously affecting her life. Her friends even claimed to experience stuff, and she had some friends that were doing like the like cleansings and energy readings, and they said when that happened, it made it worse. So that's why I tell people don't do that. Because sometimes people say they could do things and they might not be experienced enough, they might not know enough. So kind
Right.
of leave it to someone who's experienced. But yeah, she said that once she kind of changed how she was around the house, things kind of got better. But I try to follow up with her. But yeah, those little things can really, make the situation worse. But I was like, yeah, I knew it. She dressed, and I'm telling you guys because you guys are cool. She dressed slutty, and the spirits that were there treated her just like that. So, you know,
Wow.
those
Well,
things
it
happen
makes sense. You know what I mean?
all the
When
time. Yeah,
when these spirits are just trapped in this location, and that's what that place used to be. That's what they know, and
right.
obviously, so
And I
it's
don't
kind of
feel,
it's
and
just
I don't feel like they're trapped. I feel like that's probably a safe space, or like, you know, that's like their home location, right? That's where they go to have fun, or where they had great experiences at. So in a
Right.
that's
way, she's technically in their house.
it's actually funny that you say that, because actually last night me and Big, we were doing a stream, and Big was talking about when he was bouncing and at one of these clubs that was haunted.
Hmm.
And I had made a comment about it being like, what if it was just like a ghost club where
Right.
ghosts kind of go to club to hang out? It's kind of just
Yeah.
a fun place, which kind of,
Right.
makes sense. If this is like the local, brothel or, house, it's just kind of a fun place to go hang out, and
Yep.
things get out of control, right? So,
Right. And
Not
and I
sure
that,
it
try
was
not to
not
like
sure it was the case there though, man. Not sure it
I,
was the case there though.
right. I try not to like overcomplicate it, right? Because like I do feel like there are spirits everywhere whether we want them there or not. But yeah, we got to remember, people have favorite bars. There's a lot of
Mm.
haunted bars in Chicago. There,
Oh yeah.
there's a long history of brothels in Chicago. And those male
Right.
spirits, I mean, we don't know, right? So this is just me speculating, but that could have been their favorite spot. And I
Yeah.
truly believe that because they treated that case like that. So I'm like, this is their place, but you just continue doing you, right? And
Yeah.
just keep me posted. But
So that
so,
actually has
sometimes,
me
so,
curious. Yeah,
yeah.
it's got me curious, wondering if she's still experiencing any type of activity and stuff like that. You
Yeah,
know.
last I heard, she's like, she's made peace with it, but she said it still
Mhm.
happens. She was actually like an artist, and
Mm.
she was actually claiming that maybe they don't like my artwork, and that's why they're throwing it off the walls. So she actually said that has stopped almost entirely, but every time she
Mhm.
puts something new, it like shoots off.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm
Okay.
like, man, I don't know, but yeah, that was a great case.
Yeah, it sounds extremely interesting.
Yeah.
Perv ghost, man. Perv ghosts. Jeez.
You know,
That's nuts.
another time I'll have to tell you guys about like some of the more like serious cases of like pervies and like what people do as like offerings to spirits. I don't know if you guys want to
Interesting.
hear about that right now, but yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of
No,
like
I'm not.
adult type things.
I'm not sure if we'll get flagged. I'm pretty sure
Right.
we will.
no, but I definitely, like, this last hour has like completely flown
Mm.
by.
Yeah, it
And
has.
I mean, we've only gotten to know the paranormal side of you, the collector of you. There's
Mhm.
still the whole true crime side of you.
Yep.
So I
Right.
would love to have you on again.
Let me
Um,
know.
I'm I want to have a little fun question before we wrap this up.
Yep.
I mean, you kind of mentioned, these ghosts. Maybe they're going back to places they thought that was like fun.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious for all three of us. If we were to pass away, what would be like our stumping grounds? Where could I find AJ? Where
Ooh,
could I find Big?
Oh man.
you guys go first.
Um. Right off the bat, brother, the place that we spend a lot of our time at, man. Village Tavern. So like it's a spot where, you know, we get some good eats there, man. You know, it's
Mhm.
a place that we like to hang out, place that we unwind. You know, so I think
Yeah.
that's probably one of the places that I would go to.
If you've never been there, AJ, and for all our listeners and watchers, this they're not paying us. Carroll Stream, Carroll Stream, Illinois.
Right.
Uh
In
huh.
Carroll Stream, there's a spot called Village Tavern, world class chicken fingers.
I
You
think
could
there's
find
World
one.
me
I
and
thought
famous.
there
Big
was one
there.
in Skokie. I think there's one in
There is
Skokie.
one. Wait, is there
There's
one
one
in
in
Skokie?
Schaumburg. There's one
There
in
is one in
Schaumburg,
Schaumburg.
Oh, maybe it's
but Carroll
Village
Stream is the
Inn.
best.
Yeah, maybe it's in Village Inn or something. Yeah, I know it's
Yeah,
something like
Village.
that. Village something. Village Tavern. Yeah.
Yeah, world famous chicken tenders.
We might have to get AJ to come out there and tell us some more of these stories in
Yeah.
Hell
Let
person,
me
yeah,
know. I live
that would
in
be
and we
I
can
live in
great.
the
buy you
north side of
dinner.
Chicago, so I'm not far from anything.
Me too, brother. Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, for me,
All right.
I don't know. I got a bunch of dive bars I'd probably haunt though. So
Mm.
I like my dive bars. I like them shitty and I like them, my cheap beers, so.
So
Awesome.
so so go ahead and tell all our listeners and watchers where they could find you.
I'm active on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So I'm kind of everywhere. If you just look me up, AJ True Crime, one word.
Mhm.
All my accounts are verified. I think there's a couple of fake accounts, but you don't got to follow them.
You also have an event coming up pretty soon, don't you?
Yeah. July 24th is the Haunted and Cursed Objects event. That's at
Mm-hmm.
8 p.m. It's actually inside the old, well, it's an old funeral home that's now a haunted spiritualist church. So yeah, you guys should definitely come out. You'll see some of my collection, and we'll give you a tour of the church, and you guys can do your own ghost hunt while you're there.
Man, you know what? You definitely got me thinking about it. Being empathic, I do, I'm a little bit cautious the places that I go to
Sure.
because like you had said earlier, I have brought attachments back with me, but like you said, it doesn't even really have to be like I've been home
Right.
and things kind of, come in and out of here. So
Well,
I'm definitely
the Reverend
considering
actually
it.
lives upstairs. So, if you
Okay.
wanted a blessing or, her cleansing, I'm sure she'll come down and
Mm-hmm.
give it to you. But that place is so positive, they actually consider it a spiritual highway. Like spirits just come and go. They actually teach you like how to do the Ouija board there, how to do scrying, how to communicate with spirits. They teach you like your psychic like how to work on your psychic abilities. So it's a fascinating place.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just very active too. So
Awesome.
I tell people
Awesome.
that is level 10 active place. You will not be disappointed if you go there. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Yeah, we might have to check that out. Man.
Let me
AJ,
know.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, man. It's been awesome. It's been
Thank you so
fantastic.
much. Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast with you guys. It was fun.
Can't
And I
wait to
want to
get you
thank
back on.
Yeah, and I want to
Go
thank all our listeners, watchers. If you haven't, followed, Scary Vibes on Facebook, on Spotify, YouTube, and now me and Big are both doing streams every Tuesdays and Thursdays on TikTok. And you want to join the conversation, you want to jump in a box and ask us questions or share some of your paranormal experiences or stories, or even just talk about scary movies. You are
Mm-hmm.
invited to join us. But this is going to be an episode. My name is Michael, aka Mr. Scary Vibes.
My name is Abe, aka Big Paranormal. Once again, AJ, thank you so much, brother. Thank you,
Thank you
man.
so much for having me.
All right. Take care, guys. We will see you next time.